Her husband beat her. Her mother-in-law made her believe that she only wanted her money, but that changed everything. This is the story of a woman who lost everything and yet was reborn stronger than ever. Before we begin the story, subscribe to the channel for more stories about strong women like this, and like the video. Now if you're ready, let's begin the story. Renata thought she had found love, but ended up trapped in a marriage where manipulation and violence made her forget who she was. Beaten, humiliated, and betrayed, she made the most difficult decision of her life, to leave without looking back. But the story doesn't end there. Years later, fate brings her face to face with her past. Emiliano, the man who destroyed her, returns. Has he changed? Or is he just another ghost who will try to drag her back? What happens in that reunion is something no one expected. Listen to the end, and tell me in the comments which city you are listening to this story from. I want to know where you are. The sound of the key turning in the lock broke the silence of the house. The clock on the wall read almost 2 a.m. Renata, sitting on the sofa with an open book on her lap, looked up with a strange feeling. Emiliano never came home so late without warning. A few seconds later, the door burst open. Emiliano entered with heavy steps, breathing heavily as if he had run a marathon. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top, his collar wrinkled, and the smell of alcohol mixed with cheap perfume immediately permeated the air. Renata frowned. "Where were you?" she asked quietly, trying to remain calm. He didn't answer right away. He closed the door with more force than necessary and walked toward her, his eyes fixed on hers. There was something strange in his gaze, something dangerous. It wasn't just the exhaustion of a long night. It was contained rage, something boiling under his skin. "So now you're interrogating me?" he said with a twisted smile. Renata felt a chill. "It's not an interrogation. I just want to know if you're okay." Emiliano let out a harsh laugh and ran his hand through his hair, messing it up even more. "Am I okay? You tell me, Renata." His voice suddenly rose in volume. "I'm fine, knowing that the woman I sleep with, the woman who swore to love me, sees me as a fool." Renata's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" He took a single step closer, leaning over her. "That you're a liar." He spat out the word, like poison. "My mother opened my eyes. You know what she told me? That you're deceiving me, that you only want my money, that you're self-serving, and I'm an idiot for trusting you." Renata felt a knot in her stomach again. Again, her mother-in-law was poisoning her marriage. She tried to touch his arm, but he pushed her away with a sharp movement. "Emiliano, please listen to me." "Shut up!" The shout echoed off the walls, making her cringe. "Don't lie to me, Renata. Don't you dare tell me it's not true, because I've seen the evidence." "There's no evidence, because it's a lie," she whispered with a trembling voice. But Emiliano was no longer listening to her. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, his jaw tense, his breathing agitated. Suddenly, without warning, he threw the lamp from the table against the wall. The crash of breaking glass startled Renata. "My God, Emiliano, what's wrong with you?" But he didn't answer. Only his mother's words echoed in his mind. "She's a gold digger, son. She's using you." Anger clouded his reason. And then he did it. His hand rose in the air, and before Renata could react, the blow fell hard and brutally on her cheek. The sound was like a whip cracking in the air. Renata felt the immediate burning on her skin, the heat rising like fire. Her body leaned forward from the force of the impact, and she lost her balance, falling onto the sofa. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. She brought her hand to her face, feeling the hot skin and the tingling of blood beneath the surface. But what hurt the most was not the blow, it was the betrayal. It was the fact that Emiliano, the man who promised her love, believed his mother over her. Her eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. And then she noticed something on the other side of the room. Donna Estela was standing in the shadows, watching the scene with a slight smile on her lips. She did not seem surprised. She seemed satisfied. Renata felt nauseous. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Donna Estela stepped forward calmly, as if she hadn't just witnessed her son hitting his wife. "I just came to see that everything was in order," she replied in a soft voice, too calm. Then she looked at Emiliano. I told you, son. He can't be trusted. Emiliano was breathing heavily. He looked at his own hand, the one that had just hit the woman he once loved. For a moment, guilt crossed his face. But his mother's voice was an anchor dragging him back into the darkness. Renata looked at him in disbelief. Was he really going to stand there listening to his mother after what he had just done? But Emiliano said nothing, and that silence said it all. Renata felt a chill run down her spine. Something inside her broke at that moment, something that could never be repaired, and although she didn't know it for sure yet, deep down, that was the moment her marriage ended. Years ago, when Emiliano and Renata were still in the happiest phase of their marriage, Donna Estela was already working in the shadows from the first moment Renata entered their lives. She saw her as a threat, not as her son's wife, but as an intruder, a woman who sooner or later would take away her control over Emiliano. But Donna Estela was patient. She knew that manipulation done well was not imposed with shouting or direct fights. It was done slowly, drop by drop, like poison in a glass of water. And so her game began. Son, have you noticed how she spends your money? His mother's voice sounded calm, as if she only wanted to open Emiliano's eyes. They were in the kitchen of the house where he grew up, a place that always made him uneasy. Emiliano frowned. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. Renata doesn't spend much. Donna Estela sighed and slowly picked up her coffee cup, as if she were carefully considering each word. I don't know, son. I don't want to get involved, but I've seen things. The other day she came home with a bag from an expensive store. Where did she get the money? She works, Mom. Yes, but it's strange. She didn't used to buy things like that. Since she married you, she's changed. Emiliano remained silent. He didn't want to admit it, but he had thought the same thing before they got married. Renata used to be simpler. Now she had new clothes, elegant shoes, things she didn't have before. Donna Estela noticed and smiled to herself. She had hit the nail on the head. Over time, the insinuations became more frequent. Oh, please, it's just that I'm from another era. In my day, a woman had to take care of her husband, not spend his money. I don't want you to think badly of me, but what would happen if one day she left you? She could take half of everything you have. I'm just saying, be careful. I don't want to see you suffer. At first, Emiliano didn't think much of it, but his doubts began to grow. Renata's small expenses, the purchases that hadn't bothered him before, now seemed excessive. He realized that he hadn't checked the bank accounts. For months, something inside him had been telling him that he should do it, and when he did, his world changed. Son, you have to sit down. This is serious. Donna Estela was sitting in her favorite armchair with a busy but satisfied expression. Emiliano felt a pang of anxiety. Tell me, Mom. She took a folded piece of paper out of her purse and placed it on the table. A friend who works at the bank gave this to me. It's a transfer in Renata's name. Emiliano felt the air leave him. He took the paper with trembling hands and read it. It was a bank document with his name and Renata's on it. It showed a large amount of money transferred to her personal account. No, this must be a mistake. Donna Estela shook her head. I wish it were, my love, but I knew something was wrong. I've been watching her, and it turns out she's been taking money without telling you. Emiliano's heart was pounding. It all made sense now. The shopping, the expensive gifts, Renata's carefree attitude. It couldn't be. I'm sorry, son. I just want to protect you. At that moment, something inside Emiliano broke. The trust. Donna Estela saw it in his eyes and knew her work was done. The poison had already taken effect. Now it was only a matter of time before it exploded. And that night, when Renata felt her husband's blow to her face, it was the culmination of the cruelest lie Donna Estela had created. The house was silent, a thick, suffocating silence, almost tangible. The kind of silence that brings not peace but an unbearable weight in the air. Renata was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee in her hands. She felt no hunger, no sleepiness since that night, since the slap, since the satisfied look on Donna Estela's face. Something inside her had broken. If this were your sister or friend, what would you tell her right now? Stay or leave? Emiliano walked past her without saying a word, took a bottle of water from the refrigerator, and left the kitchen. Not even a good morning or an attempt at conversation. Nothing. He never apologized. That same night after the assault, Emiliano showed no remorse. He simply turned his back on her and went to his room as if nothing had happened, as if Renata weren't lying on the sofa, clutching her face, burning with pain and humiliation. And now, the days dragged on in this house where there had once been love. Renata waited. She waited for him to come to her, to tell her it was a mistake, to hug her and beg her forgiveness, but nothing happened. He simply withdrew further into himself, submerged in a silent resentment fed by the lies his mother had planted in his mind. Renata began to feel invisible in her own home. She moved like a ghost, without a voice, without a presence. The man she loved was now a stranger, someone who looked through her as if she didn't exist. When she spoke to him, his words were cold, harsh, cutting. "You've been very quiet lately. What's wrong?" Emiliano asked one night without looking up from his cell phone. Renata swallowed hard. "Nothing." He laughed humorlessly through his nose. "How strange. You used to talk so much." She pursed her lips and looked away. What did he want her to say? That she was broken? That she still felt the mark of the slap? That every time she looked at him, she felt a knot in her stomach? In the living room, Doña Estela watched the scene from afar, hiding a smile. Renata began to avoid them. She locked herself in her room whenever Emiliano and his mother were in the living room. She ate alone and slept with her back to him. Her body was there, but her mind was already beginning to escape from that place. The more Emiliano noticed it, the more annoyed he became. "How long are you going to keep up this charade?" he blurted out one night, when he found her in her room, sitting on the bed, staring into space. Renata blinked slowly without answering. "Oh, I get it. Now you're going to play the victim." She felt a bitter taste in her mouth. "I'm not playing the victim. Alone? I don't have the strength anymore." Strength for what? To keep up this lie. Renata closed her eyes, exhausted. She wasn't going to argue anymore, but something inside her began to change. A small spark of indignation, still weak but real. Why was she still trapped in a marriage where no one listened to her, where her suffering was ignored, where the man who was supposed to protect her attacked her, and didn't even... Still weak but real. A spark of indignation. Why was she still trapped in a marriage where no one listened to her, where her suffering was ignored, where a man who was supposed to protect her attacked her, and didn't even show remorse? And worse still, had Emiliano ever really loved her? Or had she just been another piece in his and Doña Estela's game? Renata looked at him as if she were seeing her husband for the first time, and what she saw terrified her. There was no love in his eyes, no guilt, nothing, and for the first time, she began to consider the idea of leaving or calling for help. Emiliano's phone vibrated on his office desk. He checked the screen. It was his accountant. He sighed before answering. He was not in the mood to talk about finances, not with everything that was going on at home. His relationship with Renata was in ruins. His mother insisted that he get a divorce, and he felt trapped in a whirlwind of frustration and anger. He clenched his teeth and slid his finger to answer. "What's going on, Hector?" "I'm busy. Mr. Emiliano, I need you to come to my office as soon as possible. It's urgent." There was something in his accountant's voice that put him on high alert. "Did something happen with my accounts?" "It's about the transfers you mentioned last time. I found some information that you need to see with your own eyes." Emiliano felt a chill run down his spine. Something was wrong. "I'm on my way." He rushed out of the office, driving with white knuckles around the steering wheel. His mind was filled with confusing thoughts. What could be so serious? Could it have something to do with Renata? When he arrived, Hector was waiting for him with a thick folder on his desk. Emiliano sat down, feeling a tightness in his chest. "Tell me straight away." Hector exhaled slowly, as if trying to measure his words. "Sir, we investigated every financial transaction that has occurred in your accounts in recent years. The transfers you thought your wife was making never existed." Emiliano frowned. "It can't be. My mother showed me proof." "Proof, Hector?" He narrowed his eyes. "Who gave you those documents?" Emiliano felt his stomach twist. "My mother said a friend from the bank." The accountant shook his head and pushed the folder toward him. "I guarantee you those papers were fake. I checked every transaction. Your wife never touched your money. On the contrary, she has been using her own money to cover household expenses." Emiliano's world seemed to collapse. No, it can't be. His trembling hands opened the folder. There it was. Account statements, bank records, receipts for payments made from Renata's personal account to pay household bills, maintenance on Emiliano's car, even grocery purchases. It was true. Renata was holding her household quietly, and he had called her self-serving. The air in the office felt heavy. Emiliano swallowed, feeling guilt burning in his chest. But if she didn't take the money, who did? Hector turned his monitor toward him and showed a series of records. This is where things get serious. For years, small amounts of money have been disappearing from your accounts, very carefully calculated amounts, just enough not to arouse suspicion. But a few months ago, the amount withdrawn increased significantly. Emiliano felt a lump in his throat. Who was it? Hector looked him straight in the eye. His mother. The silence in the room was absolute. Emiliano's ears rang. No, it couldn't be true. That's impossible. Here's the evidence. Hector pointed to the screen. The money was transferred to an account in the name of Estela Dominguez. She made sure to take small amounts at first, but when the sum became difficult to hide, she created this lie to divert his attention. Emiliano felt a fierce dizziness. Everything fit together. His mother had told him that Renata was a fraud. She had convinced him that his wife was betraying him. She poisoned his mind until he exploded. And all along, she was the real traitor. The image of Renata on the floor with her cheek reddened after the blow pierced his mind like a dagger. The sound of his own voice shouting insults. His wife's empty gaze since that night. He had destroyed his marriage with his own hands. He put his hands to his head, feeling like he couldn't breathe. Hector watched him silently for a moment. Before speaking, I don't know what you're going to do with this information, Mr. Emiliano, but whatever it is, I advise you to do it quickly, because if I were your wife, after all this, I would never forgive you. The words hit Emiliano like a blow, and in that moment, he understood. Now that the truth is out, does he deserve a second chance? Yes or no? And why? He could have discovered the truth, but perhaps it was already too late to do anything about it. Emiliano left the accountant's office with trembling legs. The world around him felt blurry and distant, as if it weren't real. His own mother had manipulated him, had turned him into a monster in Renata's eyes, and he had allowed it. He got into his car and drove aimlessly, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He felt pressure in his chest, as if something heavy were crushing him. Images of Renata flashed through his mind, one after another, like a painful film he couldn't escape. The first time he saw her in that light blue dress, laughing at something he said. God, she was beautiful on their wedding day, when he held her hand and promised to love her for the rest of his life. How ironic. The nights when she made him tea when he came home late from work, waiting patiently, loving him even when he didn't deserve it. The last image was the most painful. Renata on the floor, holding her face after he hit her. He had destroyed the only person who truly loved him. He stepped on the gas. He had to find her. He had to fix this. When he got home, he rushed in, almost tripping. Renata screamed, scanning the room with her eyes, but there was no sign of her. Fear hit him suddenly. No, she couldn't have left. He ran up the stairs 2 at a time and opened the door to her room. The closet was ajar. Some drawers were open, and on the bed, one of her suitcases was missing. The emptiness in his stomach became unbearable. He ran down the stairs, and for the first time, noticed his mother sitting in the armchair looking at him with that cold expression, that same air of superiority she had always had. Where is she? His voice sounded harsh and torn. Doña Estela took a sip of her coffee before answering. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play games with me, Renata shouted again, as if that would make her appear, but there was no response. He turned to his mother, feeling a dark rage rising in his throat. What did you do? Doña Estela let out a dry laugh and slammed the cup down on the table. Please, Emiliano, that woman had no business here anymore. She got tired of pretending. Wasn't that what you wanted? The air in the room turned icy. For the first time in his life, Emiliano saw his mother for what she really was. A manipulator, a woman who always wanted to control him, a woman who turned him into this. He took a step back, feeling a revulsion that turned his stomach. I'm going to find her, whispered Doña Estela. crossing her arms. Good luck with that. Emiliano left the house like a gust of wind. He wasn't going to lose her. Not like this. He drove aimlessly, calling her cell phone over and over again. Voicemail. He called her friends. None of them knew anything. He went to the cafes she used to go to. No one had seen her. He returned to her old apartment, to her workplace. Nothing was the same. It was as if Renata had vanished into thin air. Hours later, as the sun was setting, Emiliano stopped at a park, the same park where they used to walk on Sundays, where she would curl up on his shoulder and tell him she felt safe with him. How ironic, he thought, as he slumped down on a bench, resting his elbows on his knees and burying his face in his hands. He had been an idiot, a damn idiot. The sound of heels on the sidewalk made him look up, and then he saw her. Renata was there, her hair down, wearing a light jacket and a bag slung over her shoulder. Her eyes were hidden behind sunglasses, but her posture was no longer the same. Emiliano stood up suddenly. Renata stopped when she heard him, but she didn't react. She didn't run toward him. She wasn't surprised. She showed no emotion. Emiliano felt a twinge in his chest. "I've been looking for you." Renata slowly took off her sunglasses and looked him straight in the eyes. That look. God, that look. There was no love. There was no hate. There was nothing. His heart sank. Renata. She took a deep breath and crossed her arms. "What do you want, Emiliano?" Her voice was firm, calm, but she wasn't the same Renata. The woman in front of him was no longer his wife. If you were in her place, would you hear him out or close the door for good? She was someone who had crossed a line of no return, and Emiliano knew at that moment that perhaps there was nothing he could do to win her back. Emiliano could feel his heart beating in his ears. Renata was standing in front of him, only a few feet away, but she seemed more unreachable than ever. He tried to take a step toward her, but his whole body tensed when he saw her expression. There was no fear, no resentment, just a coldness that made him shudder. "Renata, please." She closed her eyes for a second, breathing deeply. She didn't want to be there. She didn't want to listen to him. "I have nothing left to say to you, Emiliano." He felt a lump in his throat. No, he couldn't let her go like that. "No, wait. Listen to me." His voice broke, and for the first time in a long time, he felt vulnerable. "I know the truth. My mother manipulated me. She was the one who stole the money." Renata. Renata let out a bitter laugh. "Are you really asking me that?" Emiliano opened his mouth, but had no answer, because deep down, he knew the truth. He knew that even if Renata had tried to talk, he wouldn't have listened, because he had already condemned her in his mind, long before that night. The silence between them became heavy. Renata looked at her watch and sighed. "I have to go." Emiliano felt his whole body panic. No. Could let her go. Not like this. "Renata, please. I know I failed you in the worst possible way, but give me a chance to fix this." She looked at him calmly. "There's nothing to fix, Emiliano." He felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. "I love you." Renata tilted her head slightly, as if analyzing those words, as if they no longer meant anything to her. She didn't deny it. Gently, she said, "You don't love me. Maybe you never did." Emiliano. He felt the blow to his chest. "Of course I love you." His voice sounded broken. "I was just wrong." Renata smiled slightly, but it was not a smile of tenderness or mockery. It was a smile of resignation. "Emiliano, when someone truly loves you, they never go as far as you did to me." The air turned icy. He swallowed hard, his gaze unfocused. "I don't want to lose you, Renata." She looked at him with compassion. "You already did." That was the final blow. Without another word, Renata turned her back on him and started walking away. Emiliano felt his breathing become erratic. No, this wasn't happening. Renata didn't stop. He ran after her and grabbed her wrist desperately. She stopped abruptly, slowly turned toward him, and looked down at where he was holding her. Emiliano felt a chill. It was the same look she gave him the night he hit her. His fingers immediately let go. Renata looked at him for one more second, then turned and left. He didn't follow her because he no longer had the right to do so. Renata left without looking back. She didn't run, she didn't tremble, she didn't hesitate. Every step she took her further away from that life, from the shadow of a man who once thought he loved her, but who in reality only destroyed her. The wind blew through her hair, and she felt something different in the air. Lightness, freedom. She got into a taxi, gave an address, and rested her head on the back of the seat. She didn't know what would come next. She didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. The house was silent, a hollow, dead silence. Emiliano slumped down on the sofa with his elbows resting on his knees and his gaze lost on the floor. His mind was empty. There were no more screams, no more fights, no more Renata. He brought his hands to his face, feeling the burning in his eyes. He had destroyed everything. He remembered the last look she gave him before she left. It wasn't a look of anger, and it wasn't resentment. It was something worse, indifference. Renata left without looking back, as if he no longer existed. And now, sitting in the house they once shared, Emiliano realized that she was right. He never loved her. How could he think he loved someone? It wasn't doubting her loyalty. It wasn't allowing someone else to poison the relationship. It wasn't hitting her. He ran his hands through his hair, feeling the emptiness grow inside him. Renata was gone, and for the first time in his life, he was completely alone. He got up awkwardly and walked around the house, running his hand over the dining room table, over the kitchen. Everything was in its place, but the home was broken. He reached the bedroom and stopped at the door. The bed still had Renata's perfume on it, a faint trace that would soon disappear. He sat on the edge of the mattress and looked at the side of the bed where she used to sleep. He remembered the times he would wake up in the early morning and see her sleeping next to him, breathing calmly. Before, he had never paid attention to it, but now he would never see her there again. That Renata no longer existed and would never return. The sound of the front door opening pulled him out of his thoughts. Donna Estela entered with her purse over her shoulder, looking at the house with disdain. "So she really left?" she said with a hint of mockery in her voice. Emiliano didn't respond. He didn't have the strength. His mother put her purse on the table and sat down in front of him. "Son, I know you're hurt, but it's for the best. I told you from the beginning that woman wasn't worth the trouble. Now you can start from scratch without any baggage." Emiliano closed his eyes tightly. "Mom, I know what you did." The tone of his voice made her frown. "What are you talking about?" He opened his eyes and looked at her directly for the first time, without blinders, without excuses. "You stole my money. You were the one who made up all those lies about Renata." Donna Estela shook her head and crossed her arms. "I just did what I had to do." Emiliano felt a knot in his stomach. "You destroyed my marriage. You destroyed it." The words alone hit him like a slap in the face. Donna Estela sighed, as if she were fed up with the whole thing. "Don't play the victim, Emiliano. Renata was nothing to you. Sooner or later, she would have left, like all the others." He felt hatred rising in his throat. "You wanted this, didn't you? You wanted it to end, depending only on you." Donna Estela smiled sidelong. "You are my son. I always knew it was best for you." Emiliano clenched his fists. His whole life he had been a pawn in his mother's manipulations. Every decision, every doubt, every fear he had, everything had been planted by her, and he, like an idiot, had allowed himself to be manipulated. Donna Estela got up from her chair and took her purse. "Anyway, it doesn't matter anymore." Emiliano looked at her with a frown. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "Renata is gone. Your money is gone. I have to get on with my life too." The air turned icy. "What?" Donna Estela took the keys out of her purse and smiled. "Son, if you have nothing left, why should I stay?" The final betrayal. Emiliano felt a bitter laugh rise in his throat. It was unbelievable. His mother had spent years manipulating him. One last time. "Don't worry, son. You'll learn to live with this. You'll get over it in time." And with that, she closed the door behind her. Emiliano stood in the middle of the room with the sound of the door slamming still echoing in his head. His wife had left him. His mother had abandoned him. Now he was truly alone. The emptiness in his chest became unbearable. He slumped down on the sofa, staring into space, and for the first time in his life, he was afraid of himself. Renata felt the cool air hit her face when she left the bus station. Her suitcase was light, almost as light as her body, which still carried the weight of invisible wounds. But for the first time in a long time, she was far away, far from that house, far from Emiliano, far from Doña Estela. The world outside felt strange, free but uncertain. She had no plan, no certainties. She only knew that she couldn't go back. She took a taxi and gave him the address of a cheap hotel in the center. She couldn't afford luxuries. Her bank account was almost empty. Despite having worked all that time, a large part of her salary went to household expenses, to bills that Emiliano didn't even know she was paying. When she entered the small room, she dropped her suitcase on the floor and sat on the bed with a lost look in her eyes. Now the hard part began. She took out her cell phone and unlocked it. She saw 18 missed calls from Emiliano and 7 messages. "Renata, please talk to me. I know you. Let me explain. I love you. Don't leave me like this. Tell me where you are." Renata turned off the screen and left the phone face down. She felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even relief, just a cold emptiness in her chest. That night she stayed up late, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The walls of the room seemed to close in on her. For a moment she almost felt the urge to go back to what she knew, to the familiar, to what was her life. But no, not this time. The next morning, she went out to look for work. She walked the streets aimlessly, her gaze jumping from one sign to another. Restaurants, shops, cafes. Anything would do, but the doors seemed to close one after another. "I'm sorry, we need experience. We're not hiring at the moment. If you like, leave your resume, but we can't promise anything." The hours passed, and discouragement began to weigh on her shoulders. At the end of the day, with sore feet and a dry throat, she went into a small cafe to have something to drink. She wasn't hungry, but exhaustion was killing her. She sat down at a table by the window and closed her eyes for a moment, enjoying the feeling of sitting down. It had been a difficult day. Renata opened her eyes and saw a woman in her 50s wearing an apron standing next to her table with a cup of coffee in her hand. "You look like you need it," said the woman, placing the coffee in front of her. Renata looked at the cup in surprise. "I didn't order it. On the house." Renata moistened her lips and sighed. "Thank you." The woman sat down across from her, resting her arms on the table. "I couldn't help overhearing when you asked the manager if there were any vacancies." Renata nodded, stirring the coffee with the spoon. "I need a job and a place to stay." The woman looked at her intently. "Are you running away from something?" Renata smiled sadly. "I'm running away from someone." The woman nodded slowly, as if she understood more than Renata was willing to say. "My name is Adriana, and yes, we are hiring." Renata looked up in surprise. "Really?" Adriana smiled. "It's not a dream job, but it pays the bills." Renata felt a lump in her throat. An opportunity, something she hadn't expected to find so quickly. "I'll take it." Adriana stood up. "As for a place to stay, I have a spare room in my house. It's small, but it's better than a hotel." Renata looked at her uncertainly. "I don't want to be a burden," Adriana laughed. "You wouldn't be the first woman I've helped out of a difficult situation." Renata felt her throat close up. "You wouldn't be the first." For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. That night, when she lay down on a mattress at Adriana's house, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. It wasn't a perfect life. She didn't have all the answers, but it was a start. And for the first time, she felt like she was in the right place. Renata didn't think about Emiliano. She hadn't for a long time. Her life had changed in ways she never imagined. 3 years had passed since that last conversation, since the last time she heard his broken voice begging her not to leave. Now, her world was different. She no longer worked as a waitress in Adriana's cafe. After months of effort, she got a better job at a graphic design company. She had her own small but cozy apartment. She no longer lived in fear. The nightmares had disappeared. The wound he left no longer hurt like it used to. But then fate played its part. Renata was at a restaurant having lunch with colleagues from work. It was an informal gathering with laughter and drinks. She felt good. She felt light. Until she saw him. Emiliano. The world seemed to stop. For a moment he was at a table on the other side of the room with a couple of men who appeared to be co-workers. He hadn't seen her yet. Renata felt a twinge in her stomach. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was just the surprise of seeing someone who, in her mind, was already dead. She didn't recognize him right away. His face was thinner, and his hair was shorter. There was something different about his posture, the way he moved his hands, the tired expression in his eyes. Then their eyes met. Emiliano froze, his glass halfway to his lips. His eyes widened in disbelief. Renata held his gaze. She didn't look away or turn her face away. He clumsily set his glass down on the table without taking his eyes off her. It was as if he had seen a ghost. His companions continued talking, oblivious to what was happening. But Emiliano was no longer listening to anything. He got up. Renata felt her body tense instinctively when she saw him walking toward her, an involuntary reflex. But she didn't move. He stopped a couple of steps away. He seemed nervous. Renata's voice sounded hoarse, as if she were having trouble speaking. She blinked slowly. "Hi, Emiliano?" The sound of her name in her voice seemed to hit him. He swallowed, running a hand through the back of his neck. "I didn't expect to see you here." Renata gave a slight smile, but it wasn't a warm one. "It's a small world." She nodded. She didn't know what to say. For years, she had wondered what would happen if she saw him again. If he would still hold a grudge against her. If he would see her happy. If he would hate her. Now that he had her in front of him, he felt a lump in his throat. She was different. Her posture, her gaze. She was no longer the same woman he had left behind. "Can we talk?" he asked cautiously. Renata looked at him for a long second. She could have simply gotten up, turned around, and walked away, but she didn't. "Okay," she said calmly. She picked up her purse and followed him outside the restaurant. The night air was cool. The city was lit up with neon lights and the distant sound of traffic. They stood in silence for a few seconds. Emiliano had his hands in his pockets, as if he didn't know how to begin. Finally, he sighed and looked her straight in the eyes. "I know I have no right to ask this of you, but I want to apologize." Renata didn't react. She let him speak. "I ruined everything," he continued. "There's no excuse for what I did to you. There's no justification for what I allowed to happen." The memories of that house came back to her mind, the hurtful words, the blow, but they didn't hurt her. "It took me years to realize the person I had become," Emiliano continued, his voice tense. "My mother destroyed me, and without realizing it, I destroyed you." Renata felt a strange calm as she listened to him, not because she still cared, not because she felt sorry for him, but because for the first time he understood. "After you left, everything collapsed," he confessed. "My mother abandoned me. I lost everything, and for a long time, I didn't know how to move forward." He bowed his head. "And you did." He smiled sadly. "It was hard, but I did change." There was a silence between them. Emiliano took a step closer. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I have never forgotten you, Renata." She looked at him intently, listened to every word, and then smiled. Not tenderly, not nostalgically, but with tranquility. "I changed too, Emiliano." He held his breath. "That means," she shook her head gently, "it means we are no longer the same people." Emiliano felt a void in his stomach. He understood. There was no turning back. "I'm glad you're okay," Renata finally said with a broken voice. She looked at him one last time. "I'm glad to be okay too." Without saying another word, she turned and left. Emiliano watched her with trembling hands and a heavy heart. He had spent years waiting for a reunion, an opportunity, but the opportunity never existed. Renata had already left him behind long ago, and now he had to learn to do the same. Renata didn't look back, not because she was afraid of breaking down, not because a part of her still missed him, but because there was nothing left to look at. Emiliano belonged to a past that no longer defined her. As she walked down the street, lit by the streetlights, she felt something in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not an empty peace like the resignation of someone who has accepted their fate without a fight. It was a hard-won peace, one that cost tears, sleepless nights, invisible wounds that took time to heal. Life went on for her, and she decided to live it in a way that he never let her. She got into a taxi and looked out the window as the city passed by in a blur of lights. Her thoughts were calm. There were no doubts. There were no open wounds. She had truly overcome it. When she arrived at her apartment, she dropped her shoes on the floor and walked barefoot to the kitchen, her home, a space she had built with her own efforts, without depending on anyone. without feeling like a shadow in her own life. She made some tea and stood by the window watching the lights of the city. She smiled. She never thought she would get this far when she ran away from Emiliano that night. She had nothing, no money, no stability or certainty, only the conviction that even though it would be difficult, her life belonged to her. The first few months were chaotic. She lived in Adriana's small room and learned to earn every penny with the sweat of her brow, but she survived, thrived, and then flourished. She got a better job, trained in what she was passionate about, and now ran her own design studio with a team under her and projects for big brands. When she looked back, she didn't recognize the Renata who trembled at Emiliano's words, the one who asked permission to exist in her own home, the one who lived under the weight of mistrust, the one who bowed her head, the one who lost her reflection in the mirror. That woman had died. In her place was a strong, confident, free woman. She took a sip of tea and looked at her cell phone. A message from Adriana appeared on the screen. "You faced him. I'm proud of you." Renata smiled, feeling a pain in her chest. She was not alone. She never had been. She turned off the light and let herself fall onto the bed. She would sleep peacefully for the first time in years. Her story was completely hers. He did not move for several minutes. He remained standing on the sidewalk, watching Renata disappear into the crowd. His chest felt tight, but not with anger or frustration. For the first time, he was not angry with her. He was angry with himself because he had lost her in the worst way, because he had never valued her, because he thought love was something that could be worn away without consequences. He put his hands to his head, exhaling heavily. Time does not return. Opportunities do not wait. Renata was gone, and he would never get her back because she would never look back. Not for him, not for someone who did not know how to love her when he had her for the first time in his life. Emiliano understood that some decisions are paid for forever. Woman, never doubt your worth. Love does not hurt. It does not dim you. It doesn't make you doubt who you are. If someone makes you feel small, if they take away your voice, if they make you think that without them, you are nothing, it is not love, it is prison. Renata thought she had no way out, that she was alone, but there is always a way out. There is always a life waiting for you, far from fear, far from pain. If you have ever felt that you lost your reflection in the mirror, remember this: you deserve love, respect, and freedom. And if you still have doubts, look at Renata. She went without looking back, and today, she is stronger than ever. You can do it too if this story touched your heart. We invite you to explore more content on our channel. We have many more exciting and thought-provoking stories like this one that seek to inspire you and show you that there is always hope. Click on the following video and join us for another story that is sure to captivate you from the very first moment. Don't forget to subscribe, leave your comment, and share this video with those you think need it. Thank you for being part of this community. See you in the next video, Foreign.